Hey, fourth grade family members, time for a test review. We're getting set for our decimals test coming up, and I know we may or may not have school depending on the weather, so I just wanted to make sure that this review was in your hands so that you could review with your students regardless of if we had school tomorrow or not. Here's the main question we focused on today before we started playing our Decimal Jeopardy review game. It was, how much do we actually know? How much do we remember about decimals? And if you look at our categories when I open up the Jeopardy, these are really the areas that we covered over the last couple of weeks. Converting decimals, whether they were fractions to decimals or decimals back to fractions. Expanding decimals into expanded form. Adding and subtracting decimals by lining up the decimal point and filling in with zeros. Converting fractions to decimals, as well as ordering and comparing decimals. And our final Jeopardy question has to do with number lines and decimals. So our test review you're going to see is going to be very beneficial as it will help the students prepare for the quiz. I'm going to go through each question and I'll answer most if not all of them. The first one we see is 63 hundredths. What I think the students should do is really set up a place value chart at the top of their page. Most of them have this in the back of their mind. They know what the place values are, but just as good practice, they can remind themselves that this is the ones category and this is the tens category. And to the right of the decimal point, this means and. This then starts the tenths category. And of course, to the right of that, it's getting a little bit smaller. We have the hundredths category. You may be thinking, well, isn't hundredths larger than tenths? It's not in decimals because when we move left to right, it actually gets a little bit larger. Think about it as the 100 block. When you're talking about the tens block, you're filling in a full row of hundreds, or 10 little 100 pieces. When you're talking about the hundredths block, you're only talking about one small block. Okay, enough blabble. Let's actually get to the questions. 63 hundredths is equal to one of these, A, B, C, or D. Well, I know that if I separate this and I make it an expanded form version, I'm talking about 6, which is in the tenths place value, plus 3, which is in the hundredths place value. And that means that B is my answer. You may be saying, but when we add 6 tenths and 3 hundredths, you have to have a common denominator. That's true. 6 tenths is equivalent to 60 hundredths, which still gets you the answer of 63 hundredths. This is expanding into decimals, expanded form. Question 2, expressing 7 hundredths as a fraction. What I tell the students to do is not just aimlessly circle. They may automatically know that D is the answer, but what I want them to do is practice making sure, okay, let's convert it and then check and see if one of my choices is there. That's what it would look like as a fraction, which matches this. No other one would match, so this works. Moving on to number 3. Which number has the digit 3 in the tenths place? I need to know where the tenths is, and that's where the chart comes into play. Go back up here. Oh, it's the first place value to the right of the decimal point. So I'm looking for a 3 in the tenths place, which means that A, 2 and 35 hundredths, is my answer. Now I need to add. As I had mentioned when I was showing you the Jeopardy categories, whenever I'm adding, subtracting, ordering, or comparing decimals, there are 2 rules I need to know. I need to line up the decimal points and fill in the holes with zeros. In this case, I have 5 tenths added to 2 and 34 hundredths. What hole do I have to fill in? Right here. 5 tenths can be converted to 50 hundredths by adding a 0 there, which then makes the addition much simpler. I'm having trouble with my words tonight. Thanks for bearing with me. So when I'm adding, I have to make sure that if this number is first, it goes on top, and if this number is second, it goes on the bottom. 4 plus 0 is 4. 5 plus 3 is 8. Bring down my decimal point, and the 2 as my whole number makes it 2 and 84 hundredths. Moving on, number 5. Solve. First of all, this is written horizontally, and I need to write it vertically because I need to line up the decimal point and fill in any holes that I see. In this case, I have a hole here, and I have 2 holes here. And then just add it. 4 plus 0, 4 plus 2, bring down my decimal point, 7 plus 1, 0 plus 0, and 2. 208 and 64 hundredths. When I add it, I must fill in the holes plus line up my decimal points. Here's another one. It's written horizontally. I need to rewrite it vertically. So first I need to line up the decimal points. 5 and 25 hundredths, which means that after the 8 here I should add a 0, and before the 5 here I should add a 0, and I'm ready to subtract. More on the floor, go next door, borrow 10. This 0 now is a 10, the 8 is a 7, 10 minus 5 is 5, 7 minus 2 is 5. More on the floor, go next door, get 10 more, 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. Don't forget my decimal point. And my answer is 37 and 55 hundredths. That again is simply done by lining up the decimals and filling in the holes with zeros. Write 423 hundredths in decimal form. So I have somewhat of a written form here. Got 423 hundredths. Would look like this as a fraction. And there's two ways I can make it a decimal. I can know that because there's 423, I'm going to have an improper fraction. And that shows me right here because 423 is bigger than 100. I can also use what is called the Whomping method. I have 2 zeros for my 100, so I rewrite my number, 423, and I take the amount of zeros, start over here and whomp twice. Whomp, whomp, and I'm done. I put my decimal point right here. So 423 over 100 is equivalent to 4 and 23 hundredths as a decimal. The missing symbol, whenever you're asked a question like this, we're just comparing. And once again, I know that some students just want to quickly put the symbol in there. I told them that it is best practice to make sure that they rewrite it vertically first by lining up the decimal and filling in the holes, because many students will immediately think, oh, this one's bigger than the other, without even comparing. They have to compare this way first. It's the easiest way to make a mistake if they just look at the two numbers and put a symbol. So please help them make sure that they are looking at the correct symbols. So then I compare right to left. Immediately I see, oh, this one is larger, so that must be my answer. Because remember, from right to left, in this case, we are getting smaller, left to right. Again, what's the missing symbol? I've got to rewrite everything. And then if I have a hole, which I do in this case, I fill it in. Because many students would have said, oh, 49 is bigger than 5, but 50 is certainly bigger than 49, which means 2 and 50 hundredths is bigger than 2 and 49 hundredths, or 2 and 5 tenths is the larger number, because, again, from left to right, we're increasing. Write the number as decimals. All right, I've got 6 hundredths. I'm just converting the decimals. I need to make it as a decimal, so 6 hundredths would be decimal point, and a 6 in the hundredths place value. 5 tenths would be a decimal point, and then a 5 in the tenths place value. 4 tenths, a decimal point, then a 4. Ooh, 3/4. I'll come back to that one. 33 hundredths would be a decimal point, and 33. And now 3/4. You may be wondering, well, that's not over 10 or over 100. We taught the students that you have to convert it. Make it an equivalent fraction. How are we going to do that? We have to make sure that the decimal, to make it a decimal, you have to put it in a fraction form with either 10 in the denominator or 100. So how in the world do I get 4 to 100? I'll multiply it by 25. 4 times 25 is going to get me 100. Whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. 3 times 25 is 75, which now means 3/4 is equivalent to 75 hundredths, and as a decimal, that looks like 0.75. Now that I have all of these, I need to order them from greatest to least. So my biggest number will go first, my lowest number will be all the way on the right. What I would do, again, is take all of these numbers, convert them all into hundreds, and line them up along the side here. So I have 6 hundredths. Now, 5 tenths I know is equivalent, if I fill in the hole, to 50 hundredths. 4 tenths is equivalent to 40 hundredths. Going to make it easier to compare and see which one is the least and which one is the greatest. This is showing all of my work. If a student just simply writes these numbers down on the lines, they're not showing all of the work, which is what we've worked on here at school. And then you just start comparing. Well, this one doesn't have anything in the tenths, which means it is my least number. And because I'm going greatest to least, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, this one is going to be the 5th one. Keep comparing. Yeah, I have 75 in my tenths. That's going to be my greatest number. Even though it looked like the smallest fraction, it's the greatest decimal. So this one, because it's greatest to least, will be the first one that I write. I'm still comparing. Which one will be next? After 75 hundredths, it's 50. Then the third one is 40. And the fourth one is 33. My largest, 75 hundredths. The second one, 50 hundredths. Third one, 40 hundredths. Fourth one, 33 hundredths. And then 6 hundredths. Write them on those lines. Finally, we come down to a word problem. A car traveling 5 7/100 kilometers. A truck traveled 1,700 kilometers less than the car. How far did the truck travel? This here that is circled that says show your work, if you've got to this question and you don't have any of your work, you better go back and redo it now because I'm going to make you do it here at school. I've got 5 7/100. I can make a bar model out of this. I have a car and show how far he traveled. This car, if I create a little mustache to show the total, traveled 5 7/100. The truck traveled less than, which means it's going to have some number here, which is going to be a smaller bar, minus, which would be whatever this is. So again, I'm taking my two decimals, 5 7/100, lining up my decimal point, and subtracting. 7 minus 7, 0. More on the floor, I must go next door. 10 minus 1, 9. Bring down my decimal point. How far did the truck travel? Well, this was the difference. So if they traveled 4 9/10 or 4 90 hundredths less, that's my answer. Rewrite it in word form. Remember, show all of your work. If you're showing everything that you know about decimals, then what you're doing is making sure that you show all of your work because it is so simple to make simple mistakes with decimals. Hope this video helped.